Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rumination News Network. Today we are going to be talking on a very important topic that goes to the very foundation of our political, cultural, and historical struggle as Black people worldwide. Black unity scarce power, and that's why we are being divided across the Caribbean, across the United States, across Africa and Latin America. Every time Black people begin to move toward real unity, real consciousness, and real power, there's always an immediate response from those who fear what unity could produce. Governments intervene, media narratives shift, old divisions suddenly resurface, and social conflicts, many of them manufactured, begin to spread. This is not accidental. Division has always been a tool used to keep Black communities weak, disorganized, and unable to challenge the forces that exploit our nation and our people. This evening, we are going to confront this head on. I'm honored to be joined by two powerful voices who have spent decades studying and challenging these dynamics, Margaret Kimberley and Gerald Pereiro. Both have been fearless in exposing imperialism, political manipulation, and the strategic fragmentation of Black people across the world. In this live, we will dig deep into the historical, political, and psychological roots of division. We will examine who benefits when Black people remain divided and what a unified Black front would mean for global power in the 21st century. So let's begin with the question that sets the tone for this evening's conversation. Is Black unity a myth, or has it been intentionally made to look impossible by the forces that fear it most? So let me see if we are going to be, if Miss, yeah, we have, yes, she's here. Our guest is here. Good evening, Miss Kimberly.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. I've been trying so long to get you on the program, but seeing that we have not been able to do that, and thanks to Mr. Pereiro, I've been able to get you on the program because I met him actually through you. Because I read the Black Agenda report every week. I'm a frequent reader. I listen to your podcast. So I think his the last article the one that he wrote that I wanted him to be on the program was when he wrote the article on Guyana being the pawn of the United States that was published in your paper. And I decided that I have to get Mr. Pereira. He's going to be joining here on the line. And so, he came and we've been having wonderful time discussing a wide array of issues on this channel. Thank you so much, Ms. Kimberly, for joining.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you. I do have a question. Where are you located? I'm just curious.
I'm actually in Santo Domingo. I don't know, but I'm actually Jamaican roots, and I'm actually here in Santo Domingo at the moment.
Okay, very nice. Well, I'm in New York City, in case you're wondering. And
no, I'm not. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pereira. Thank you for coming. We're not hearing you. Can you turn off your mute?
Gerald?
Still mute, Mr. Pereira. While he's doing that, let's get to describe to introduce rather formally Miss Margaret Kimberley. Margaret Kimberley is an executive editor and a senior columnist of Black Agenda Report and the current host of the Black Agenda Radio podcast, which is also heard on Pacifica stations WBAI in New York and WPFW in Washington, D.C. Her book, Prejudential: Black America and the Presidents, was published in 2020 by Steerforth Press. Dr. Colonial West said, and I quote, Margaret Kimberley gives us an intellectual gem or prophetic fire about the U.S. presidents and their deep roots in the vicious legacy of white supremacy and predatory capitalism. Such truths seem more than most Americans can bear, though we ignore her words at our own peril, rather. Now, so those of you you can go over to the Black Agenda Radio and where you will see her podcast, and also you can read her weekly paper, Black Agenda Report, that is online. Now, Mr. Gerald Pereira, who is always here, let me introduce him again. Mr. Gerald A. Pereira is a liberation theologian, educator, and political activist. He is chairperson of Organization for the Victory of the People, that's OVP, based in Guyana, a member of the governing council of the Global Pan-African Movement, and an executive member of the Caribbean Pan-African Network, that's the CPAN. He's lived in Libya for many years and was a founding member of the World Mataba, and he can be reached. Okay, so let's join the program now and get into the weeds of our discussion. Now, our discussion today, ladies and gentlemen, is, I think I've already introduced the program, but the title is Black Unity Scares Power, and that's why we are being divided. Now, I'll begin with you both, and I don't know who would like to begin, and I would like to ask the question, is blackness a myth? When we say the black unity or the black community, is it a myth, or is it something, it's a social construct that we have taken on and that was imposed to us by our white counterparts, and we've just carried on since slavery onto present times?
Well, I don't think it's a myth. There is a Black community. There are Black communities. Here in the U.S., the Black community here is made up of people whose ancestors were enslaved here. There are also many people descended from the Caribbean, especially places in places here like New York. But yes, it is. We have a culture that's ours. We have an ancestral memory. Our culture is loved the world over. We're a unique and distinct group in many ways. So yes, there is definitely a Black community, but as you were beginning, any efforts at unity are always thwarted. I think Black people want to be unified. Some of the greatest moments in history are about what we have achieved when we are unified. I think that's what we want, but that is threatening. So we have people from Marcus Garvey to Martin Luther King, who Marcus Garvey's character was assassinated, and he was deported from the U.S. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X assassinated. A reaction, a counter-revolution that's been going on now in the U.S. since the early 70s, propaganda that tells us that we are not a distinct group, or now we're seeing, and these are people I don't connect with at all. They call themselves ADOS, African descendants of slaves, and foundational Black Americans, and believe they must separate themselves from Black people anywhere else in the world, to the point of being openly hostile. But all of these things that I just mentioned, all of those things have been deliberately created. The things that keep us from being unified, the counter-revolution that has manifested itself in so many ways. For example, a mass incarceration system. Black people were not imprisoned in the U.S. to this extent until the early 70s. And this was an effort, a successful one, sadly, to keep us from being empowered, to keep us from being unified and striving towards positive goals. So yes, we are a community. We do want to be unified, but Black unity, unity of African descended peoples, is something that the white power structure sees as very threatening.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Pereira, your chance. Do you think the community is a myth? Do you think the Black community is a myth, that we don't have a Black community? Can you hear me, Mr. Pereira? Yeah, we're not hearing you. You're still muted. Yeah, we're still. Okay, I think while Mr. Pereira is taking care of matters, because we're not hearing him, we'll go to another question to Miss Kimberly, Margaret Kimberly. Now, the next question, as you touched on, Miss Margaret Kimberly, was the whole matter of the separation that we have among Black people, in which we have the foundational Black Americans, and those are saying the ADOS. Now, why would you think that if we are distinct in terms of, we have different cultures, people are hailing, even Africa, the continent of Africa, you have different peoples there. And I think that Africans don't see themselves alike also. They see themselves as a continent. So how would you be able to say that we have a unified community when even on the continent of Africa, people are not unified?
Well, I think we don't always succeed in being unified. I will say that there's always a unity of thought, a unity of culture. Also, I think in Africa, the African continent itself. Let's talk about how Africa was divided in the
Yes.
1880s. The Berlin Conference, the European powers came in and chopped up and the continent. Well, we'll take this part, you take that part. English. People speaking English or French or Portuguese, or even German. There were German colonies, lest we forget. The first genocide of the 20th century was the German suppression of the freedom struggle in Namibia, lest
Yes.
we forget. So we have this disunity that was created by this scramble for Africa. It has not disappeared. Even after they call it flag independence or briefcase independence in the 60s, Africa is still very much colonized by capitalism.
Yes.
So, and when leaders emerge who want to practice self-determination for their people, well, what happened to Patrice Lumumba? What happened to Thomas Sankara? So I think it's a similar story. I am a Pan-Africanist, and that does not mean that people look at it in a simplistic way. It does not mean every African or Jamaican I've ever met was somebody I liked, and that's not even the point. The point is to be unified in our struggle against racism and against capitalism.
Correct. And I think I agree with you, because sometimes people see us, and because they see our color, they think that we share similar values, we share similar mores, and that is not necessarily so. Because somebody's Black and from my country doesn't mean that I share the same worldview and the same perspective. Neither do I want necessarily to be close to that person. But we tend to have this sort of simplistic understanding of what Blackness is. And when I look at other communities, such as the Asian community, the Hispanic community in the United States, for example, they don't see themselves in such simplistic ways. For example, the Hispanic, they want to see themselves as nationals. So the Dominicans are distinct from the Colombians from the Guatemalans, and all of that stuff. But yet still sometimes as Black people, we just say that, oh, we're a Black community, when other communities, even the Asian community, the Koreans are not necessarily, they don't see eye to eye with the Chinese and Japanese and so forth and so on. So how do we begin to assess all of those realities and just say that we're just a Black community, all of us are in for the same struggle? Is that really true? Because historically, we tend to sometimes, I want to say, romanticize the history, when in the history also we had a lot of divisions in terms of we didn't really see eye to eye on many issues. Let us say, for example, Marcus Garvey with W.E. Du Bois, among other very world-renowned Black leaders. So are we ever going to ever see eye to eye, even with the vision that we hold for our people in terms of our goals and our objectives?
Well, do we have to see eye to eye? Well, first of all, everyone is not interested in unity. Everyone's not interested in Pan-Africanism. So for some people will never be unified. But it's still something to struggle for. I believe it, we're in a very interesting moment in world history right now. And it requires unity in order to survive. And I'm not exaggerating. We've seen this devastating hurricane that struck Jamaica, especially this hurricane Melissa, which is, I think, the most powerful hurricane. It's in many decades, and it's linked to global warming, which is linked to climate change, which is linked to fossil fuel production, which is linked to capitalism. So we're talking about survival for our people. But I think the most important thing is for those of us who do have this point of view to be in solidarity with one another. And there are people who will, when in the 60s, during the days of the Black Panther Party, there were so many people who wanted to join. They had to stop people from joining. They were successful, which is why they were crushed. So I think any expression of unity is discouraged or beaten down or destroyed. But I think we should not focus on individuals and say that there are individuals who won't want to be unified. That is true, but I don't think that's the point. I think the point is for us, those of us who are striving for that, to keep striving for those things.
Very well said. Mr. Pereira, can you hear us now? And can we hear you?
I can hear you.
Yes, very well. And we can also hear you. Okay, so we were talking about the matter of Black unity.
I have to go out and come back in. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you so much. Black unity. And we were wondering, is there a Black community and will we ever be united? What's your take on the matter?
Well, I agree, Sister Margaret. The reality is there's a Black community, a global Black community. And if the reality is that Africans, and I'm being specific, Black people of African ancestry, are not treated as human beings for any part of this this planet. We are the most marginalized, downtrodden, disrespected racial or ethnic group that you have. I believe in, of course, Black unity, Pan-African unity, as Sister Margaret. I'm a Pan-Africanist, but I believe that we will have to build unity on principle rather than political expedience. What is interesting is when the white world, the Western nations, are dealing with us, dealing with non-white people, primarily Africans, they unite irrespective of ideology. Tony Blair was a social democrat or a social liberal, but he found common ground with George Bush, when it came to, for example, the war in Iraq. My point, look at what they did Robert Mugabe. People with conservative ideology, a white leader with conservative, leads a party with conservative ideology, and another one with liberal or social democratic ideology can find common ground when it comes to dealing with African leaders or Black leaders. They're never going to come. They're united. They find common ground. But we have a problem, for example, in Africa, when coming together to stand with one voice against a common enemy. So, look at what, let me give you an example in what is happening right now in the motherland. For example, in the vote against all the countries voted for in favor of Cuba for the sanctions to be lifted. Only two went against, voted for the sanctions to remain, and that's the United States, rogue state USA, and rogue state Israel. Now, what is interesting is Morocco abstained. Morocco didn't vote against because for Morocco is back in the African Union. So if Morocco had voted against it, they would have been the oddball in Africa because all the African countries voted for the sanctions and the embargo against Cuba to be lifted. But Morocco abstained because Cuba supports the Sahrawi Republic and the Polisario in the struggle. You see, but the thing is, Morocco should not have been allowed to re-enter into the African Union because Morocco is taking positions that are not in the interest of African unity. And a number of countries like Togo, that is fronting for Morocco, is trying to hold a Pan-African Congress next month in Togo. The point is that, getting back to what I said, we'll have to build, yes, we're for unity, but not all are going to be with us in this struggle for unity. There will be those who will consciously side with the enemy. This is, because there are other factors that will allow them to take positions against what we are trying to achieve. The liberation of Africa, the unification and total liberation of Africa under a non-capitalist part of development. So we have countries and leaders who are actively working with the imperialists to make sure that you don't have the unity that we are pursuing, are attempting to achieve.
Right. Now, in history, we know that we went through a common experience of slavery and then colonialism. In the case of the United States, you had segregation, right, and Jim Crow laws. And it affected all Black people, so-called Black people, right? So that was what led to a unification. But what can we say is the common experience that we're having now that would unite us under a political banner for liberation? Anyone?
I think it's I think it's the same struggle for true independence, for self-determination, for freedom from control by capitalism, freedom from control of white supremacy. So I don't think that struggle has changed very much. It's the same one, but conditions change all the time. I spoke of neocolonialism. We had the collapse of the Soviet Union, which the reverberations are still being felt. We have the United States constantly seeking hegemony over the rest of the world, which is divided. I think it's interesting that I would like to think we're moving towards a multipolar world, but I don't think so. We saw the United Nations Security Council vote about Palestine last week, and not one country would veto, and the countries that had the power, China and Russia, chose not to, which I think is a very, very dangerous situation. So our struggle is the same, but it's now the same with the U.S. On top, still being the undisputed superpower, with capitalism, while it is in a state of crisis, still being very powerful. The U.S. having the power to attack other nations. So I think our goals should be the same. But the question for me is, with the conditions we have now, how do we struggle?
Very well said. Mr. Pereira?
Well, I agree that there's a great Caribbean theologian, scholar by the name of Cartwright Davis. He wrote a book called Emancipation Still Coming. Our leaders in the Caribbean, the mistake they made was to treat emancipation as a single act. We walked off, our ancestors walked off the plantation, the chins were no longer in the feet, and that was it. We're talking about, today we're talking about emancipation still coming. And that struggle is linked to for total decolonization and the struggle for true independence, because the independence that we got, Walter Rodney referred to it as briefcase independence, and we call it the flag and anthem independence. We have our own head of state anthem and what have you. But when you look at the Caribbean after so many years of independence, Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad, and you look at the descendants of enslaved, of captured Africans, we don't control the economies. Our economies are controlled by Europeans, Indian capitalists, and Syrian and Lebanese. These are the people that control the economy in Trinidad. They control the economy in Jamaica, in Barbados, in Haiti, all across. And our people are economically disempowered. So the black faces in high places have not really few leaders. There were leaders who started on that part, and then, you know, after some of those leaders died, the parties and those who took over took the nation and the various parties in a different direction, implementing neoliberal economics and what have you. And after 35 years or 40 years of neoliberal economics in the Caribbean, Africans in the Caribbean are the most pauperized, the most marginalized, and the most economically disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter
Yes.
whether if you take Trinidad, whether it's a government led by the Indian woman, the UNC, or the PNM headed by an African Trinidadian, it doesn't change because we still have, it's a neocolonial arrangement. And
Mm-hmm.
those
Mm-hmm.
leaders that we have are happy. They're happy to just be what we call plantation overseers. They're not committed
Right.
to a radical transformation of the of what is that. The plantation social and production relations is still intact. It's just in a more sophisticated and much more way today. But we still have people, workers, who refer to the general manager as boss, and they're treated that way. So we have a lot to do, and I believe, and I make no apologies for it, I believe that I've always argued this, and then they have those who will argue and say the physical aspect, but I'm talking morally, from the moral aspect and spirit. Africans are a very morally and superior people. I have seen the way that Africans are prepared to forgive people for the crimes and atrocities that they've committed. I don't see the others reciprocating or doing the same. I think I give you, Andrew, an example of what took place with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa under Desmond Tutu.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the white South Africans who lost relatives in the struggle, they wanted blood. They were calling for the blood of the apartheid agents. Some of their relatives were in supported the Communist Party, and they were calling for blood. But then there was this elderly couple who lost their son. They couldn't find, up to today, they don't know where the body is. And they were telling this boss, this security agent, just, we forgive you. Just tell us where the body is so we can. So I'm telling you, this is something completely different. So I
Yes.
believe what George Lamin, the great Caribbean writer, said from Barbados. I believe that the African, in their own self-emancipation and liberation, will liberate all humanity, because the African is the most oppressed. And Africans, there's no country on planet Earth where black people or African people use political, military, and economic power to dominate other races. None. No part of this world.
Yes.
Not on planet Earth.
Yes. Yes. Now let's go to the economics. I'm happy that you said that our economics are not so very promising, positive, if you will. And when you look at the fact that many times when you see a person of African descent in very high positions, whether at the World Bank or even in the United States, remember when President Barack Obama became president, and I was a lecturer at Howard University at the time, and most of my students, some of whom did not come to class, all of them showed up that morning because they were so happy to see a black man going to the White House. Now we're seeing, after many years, that he did not deliver on the promises that he told them that he would have accomplished, even though he pretended as if he was a black man and knew the struggles and everything. Now, if we do not, because, Marcus Garvey did warn us that white people will never accept us as equals, never, But I think that we think somehow that they will. And with our integration and the fact that we've been able to move up and we are now presidents and we're now presidents of World Bank and all of that stuff, that we think that we are their equals. We are their equals, don't get me wrong, but we think of it in terms of materialistic, in terms of we place their needs over our needs. And that's the whole thing. I think we need now to, how are we going to be able to maneuver ourselves, as Marcus Garvey was doing, in this very entrenched, what should I say now, Western global economic world? How are black people going to liberate ourselves economically when we're so deeply entrenched in this predatory capitalistic society? Ms. Kimberly?
Well, the issue is
Can you hear?
capitalism. Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me. I
Good, good,
wanted to say
good, good,
something
good.
about emancipation in the Caribbean. A few years ago, I
Mm-hmm.
learned a fact that just stayed in my head, that the supposed emancipation of enslaved people in the Caribbean, there were reparations paid to the slave holders. And it was so much money
Mm-hmm.
that it was not paid until the 21st century. So even
Yes.
in the alleged emancipation, and these are still some of the richest people in Britain. And also, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
real emancipation. There was an apprenticeship or something, and they did the same thing in various places in the U.S. But that tells you quite a lot. And it tells you about the riches that were accrued by Europe by the enslavement of Black people. But capitalism
Mm-hmm.
is the problem. That is, I think the two in the United States, I always say the two worst things about the United States are racism and capitalism, or racialized capitalism, as some people refer to it. And as long as this system exists, we will not truly be free. Excuse me. We're seeing a lack of freedom for everybody in our country as living standards drop. I mean, it's excuse me, everyone's talking about affordability and inflation here in the United States. It's capitalism doing what capitalism does. And it requires that a group of people be on the bottom. That's us. So that is the issue, and I know it's a big issue, and to talk about radical change or revolution, but that's necessary. And I do believe that Black people, if you look around the world, the Haitians didn't just liberate themselves; they helped liberate other people in the region.
Mm-hmm.
Black people here, the
Mm-hmm.
civil rights movement of the 1960s, there were benefits to everybody. Medicare, Medicaid, health insurance programs from the government, still inadequate, but it didn't exist until Black people in mass forced a political crisis. So our enemy is the same enemy. The enemy, though, but it's a powerful enemy, and it can change course. It can do things differently and stave off, it thinks, destruction, and that's what we're up against.
Yes. Now, Miss Kimberly, if we don't use capitalism, what would be our option? Because then we want to replace it with what? If not capitalism, what would be the economic model or theory for Black
Socialism.
people?
Socialism. I mean, it's the only way.
Mm-hmm.
There have been various times where people have here, and I'm sure in your countries as well, talk about Black capitalism and Black people owning businesses. And I'm not going to vilify someone because they're in business for themselves, but that's just not going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. We need a new system.
Mm-hmm.
We have a system that's predatory, that has created destruction of human beings, destruction of the planet itself, and we have to get rid of it. So socialism is the issue. We have to learn what that is, learn what that means, and strive towards that. That is the only way we are going to survive. That I believe that humanity is going to survive.
Yes. Now, Mr. Pereira, in history, in Black history, have we ever seen where socialism worked for the masses? My study of history, and you guys can correct me, is even Toussaint Louverture in Haiti, capitalism was what he used when he was trying to rebuild Haiti after, the French devastated that country, during the Haitian Revolution. And also Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was, an ardent capitalist. What do you guys say about that, Mr. Pereira?
Well, first of all, before I get to that, I just want to say when you mention Obama, I don't think we were
Mm-hmm.
never carried away like Black Agenda Report, Sister Kimberly, and those people. They were never carried away by Obama because we understand the class
Yes.
character of imperialism,
Yes.
capitalism, and how white supremacy operates. Barack Obama was just the
Yes.
black face of white supremacy, and white supremacy I wouldn't be surprised the next you will see the Ku Klux Klan. It is possible for the Ku Klux Klan to have a Negro as a Grand Wizard. You know, that's how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yes.
changes the essence. The form might look different, but the essence remains the same. Now, I do agree, as a Pan-Africanist, I do agree that the alternative is socialism. Rosa Luxemburg once said it's either socialism or barbarism. So the point is, I'll give you the African long before, I'm not talking about Marx's contribution. Marx made a tremendous contribution. Marx's critique of capitalism, no one can deny. You know, he did say that capitalism came into the world dripping from head to toe with the blood of it, of chattel, of labor. So I believe that Marx made a great contribution to socialist thought and to socialist thought. But let's look at the African. After our ancestors, even in Guyana, when they came off the plantation, they pooled their resources together and they bought villages. And they had the forced cooperative movement here. This long before we talking about Oneida, Rochdale, and all these places. And it was successful. It was successful. But you know what? The planter class destroyed the cooperative socialist venture of these villages. They frustrated the development. They flooded their estate and forced them to abandon the lands and to go into the hinterland to prospect for gold. Good. And it destroyed the African families because people went away from their families for long. There was no road and anything. So one of the things about when you offer socialism as an alternative, the ignoramuses and the detractors say, but look, it didn't work. No. Socialism was never given the breathing space. Now, if socialism doesn't work, then leave it, let it collapse of its own volition. Why do you spend billions and billions of dollars to destabilize it? It just, I lived in Libya, and that was a socialist society. I never paid, the occupant of the house was the owner of the house. I never paid rent. I never paid a water bill. I never paid an electrical bill. And if you were ill, and even if you had a serious operation, you didn't have to worry whether you had money in the bank or what. You can get the medical treatment right away, the operation without 1 cent. Why? Because the human element, people was placed, the dignity of the human person was affirmed and placed before private profit. And that is what capitalism is about. Capitalism does not operate primarily to satisfy human needs. I'll give you an example. How there was this worker, he was working in a meat factory, and this is how he came to accept socialism. He said late at night they will be working, and then they will have all this quality meat that they will just dump in a chute and destroy. So he said, why don't we take this meat, and give it to the hungry, the beggars? They said they can't do that. But this is what they do. Farmers are paid to dump milk in Portugal and in Spain, tomatoes, right? And people are hungry. So it has failed. Capitalism, you look at the capitalist countries, the gap between the have and the have-nots have widened. New Zealand, that had a socialist party, Labour Party, social democratic years, all that has been reversed. It is one of the most unequal societies on planet Earth. Good. Now, look at the amount of people who 360 something billionaires, the concentration of wealth. And the countries that try to pursue a capitalist path of development, you do not give them a breathing space, like you're doing Venezuela. I went to Venezuela in the early 80s, long before Maduro and Chavez. And one of the things that struck me when I arrived at the airport, I mentioned to you, was the invisibility of black people. The only time I saw black people was when I went to the washroom. They were cleaning the toilets. Now, if you go to Caracas, the immigration officers, 23, 24-year-old, young African Venezuelans, all the cambios, you know, that revolution has moved Africans and indigenous people from the margins of the society to the central. And that is why the Pan-African groups are supporting the Venezuelan revolution. We had 3 ambassadors here under the Maduro government that Africans, 2 women and a gentleman. Before that, before the Bolivarian Revolution, every ambassador that came was a white Venezuelan. So the point I'm making is that you do not give, look, as Margaret pointed out, look at what the Soviet Union achieved. We may not have agreed with the Soviet model, but the Soviet Union did made tremendous gains that nobody can deny. Today, after united Russia, the second largest and most powerful party in the Russian Federation is the Communist Party of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So millions all over the world. So people, I believe that is the alternative. We either go to pursue a socialist path of development. There's no other way.
Yes. One last question on economics is the fact that the Chinese model that we're looking at now, and perhaps that is what Marcus Garvey was looking at. If our enemies have a white Harvard, we need to have a black Harvard to compete with them. If they have a capitalist-run society, maybe that's what we need to have and do it better than they do it. And that seems to be what the Chinese have done and seems now to be outpacing the United States economically. Why aren't we able to do that, Ms. Kimberly?
I have, it's interesting you talk about China. I've been to China twice in the past year. China is an interesting model where there is a socialist state, there is a planned economy, but there's also private ownership that is permitted. And the end result is China is this economic colossus rivaling the United States. And speaking of wanting to break up unity, the U.S. is obsessed with trying to diminish China, but to no avail. So this can be done. We do have models. But as was already pointed out, look what the U.S. has done to Cuba. And this attack on Venezuela is also an attack on Cuba. Cuba gets oil from Venezuela. If they can overthrow the Bolivarian Revolution, they can destroy Cuba also. And then they will go to Nicaragua. One by one, they picked off these democratic socialist governments in South America, and they are committed to doing away with revolutionary governments in this hemisphere. That's part of the U.S. insisting on primacy, as they call it, hegemony, making sure that there are no independent nations in this hemisphere. And that if a country should choose to be in solidarity with China or have relations with Russia or Iran or some other country the U.S. has declared an adversary, then they have a target on them. And that is what that makes this moment very, very dangerous.
Yes, and that's the point, Mr. Pereira, that when we are so dependent by the banks that we are, merged in with them and all of the other institutions that we are tied to, then it's very difficult for us to be independent, for them not to control us. When we don't have a military as strong, as potent as theirs, then they're going to come in and they're going to, beat our butts. So, how do we now begin to form a system that we can protect ourselves economically and militarily as, say, a China? How are we going to do that? Mr. Pereira?
You talking about the Caribbean?
Well, the black people in general, whether it's because we know that it's an attack on all, of Africa, wherever we are.
People, there are a number of organizations. For years, we've been advocating that the Caribbean needs to build strong ties with the African Union, and so, especially certain countries. But there's some weak links in the chain in the Caribbean who allow the United States to pressure them, and they go along with American bullyism. There are those who, like, I must give credit to Prime Minister Mia Mottley for standing up, and Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves to sort exit, yes, as well as Prime Minister Brown in Dominica,
the Antigua. Oh,
But
Dominica.
but
Okay.
but Guyana, and Trinidad is happy to go along with the American narrative about, for example,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a war and drug trafficking and all of that, and we know that's absolute nonsense. But you
Mm-hmm.
know, the Caribbean, some time ago, some Caribbean leaders like Manley, Barrow, and Burnham pointed out to Williams that the Caribbean, we have to operate with one voice or else we'll perish. We're small island nations, you know. Guyana, 800,000 people. It's a huge country, 800,000, Barbados, and these places. So these little islands, what we have in common. The ships that brought our ancestors, they dropped off, some in Jamaica, some here, and different places. And
Yeah, but Mr. Perot, that's what Marcus Garvey was trying to do, to mobilize Black people around the world. That's why he
of
was
course,
having the Black Star, the Star Liner, whatever it was called. So that's what we have to look beyond just being island, and as African Americans have to look beyond
exactly,
just
we
being
cannot
African
survive.
Americans and
Yeah, that's
Africans.
right. That's right. But the other thing is that, but you mentioned Marcus Garvey when you said he was a capitalist. I don't think Marcus Garvey never, if you read Garvey carefully, I don't think Garvey understood the political economy of capitalism. What happened was Marcus Garvey was responding in a kind of a way to some of the communists in the Communist Party, the black activists in the Communist Party, like W.B. Du Bois and others, right? And socialism or communism was associated with the abolition of private property, right? So Marcus Garvey felt that he equated all business or commercial activity, any business activity, with capitalism. But you have to remember that commerce and business activity and private property predated capitalism. So I don't think what I'm saying, of course, Marcus Garvey made a great contribution without knocking Garvey, but Garvey never brought that class analysis, and we have to build on Garvey. He did not bring a class analysis, and he thought that because the communists had a position on business commerce, economic activity, private ownership, or about Black people owning. Say, why Black people can't own? So we can practice Black capitalism. But Black capitalism is a myth. It's a myth.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah. So
Now,
I'm not, of course,
go ahead.
Garvey, but as I said, he did not understand the political economy of capitalism.
I understand your point, Mister. Thank you so much. Now, should the Black world aim for a single Pan-African political agenda? And if so, what should be its top priorities? Because, one of the things that I've seen, and I've spent a decade or more at Howard University, is that our Black people talk a lot. And we have conferences, and people just like to go to all of that. And it's all about superficial, and nothing comes out of it. And that is why I liked about Marcus Garvey. I think he was perhaps one of the few Black leaders of the world who was able to merge theory with praxis. I think we are so much caught up in theory that we don't know how to, what should I say now, put the theory in practice. And I think that is what is affecting us as Black people. So we educate ourselves and we go to universities, but oftentimes we do not ourselves understand economic theory either, if you should tell us. And even history, sometimes we're not able to connect the dots to be able to see what lessons we ought to learn from the mistakes of the past. So what should be our top political priorities right now if we are really serious, not just about talking on podcasts and as myself I'm doing here and just going to conferences, but be able to implement those political priorities? What would they be? Miss Margaret, Miss Kimberly?
Well, I think we have to, we need political education. We need to learn class analysis. We need to learn, speaking of a successful socialist state, we need to learn the historical materialism and the dialectic, all of those things that we need to know. But these are very weighty questions, I think, of, what should Black people do now? It's one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about, but we have to reject everything that's failed, like capitalism. Capitalism has failed. Right. Black people have suffered because of it. and it has to be rejected. Now, it's difficult to compare our history to that of China, for example. China has a unique story. But China, there were decades of struggle, of bloodshed, of after the century of humiliation. Then there was the Japanese invasion. Then there's the war, World War II. Then there's a civil war. Then they emerge triumphant. Then there are years of errors and successes. Yeah. So it's difficult to compare us to anyone else. Or, I mentioned Cuba. Cuba emerged from armed struggle, Nicaragua from armed struggle. Can we do that in the United States, where Black people are in the minority and a right-wing ideology controls the country? I don't think so, but we have to figure out what that can be. So it's a complicated answer. Excuse me, a complicated question. Mm. So I don't feel comfortable saying, aside from what I already said, that in order to move forward, we need a lot of study and we need organization. The basics of organizations like Black Alliance for Peace in the US, as an example. So that's what we need. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to be organized, and we must know our history, what worked, what didn't work, how movements were destroyed, etc. So that is what I think we should do now.
I was listening to you, Ms. Kimberly, and I thought about the whole matter of integration, right? Integration was a good thing and it was a bad thing. It was good in the sense that it allowed Black people to be mainstreamed and to be able to get rid of the Jim Crow laws and so forth. And many African Americans and Black people in general were able to access important institutions and develop themselves. However, we lost a sense of the community in that era. And that, I think, that was perhaps one of the setbacks of integration. My analysis of capitalism is the same, that some Black people have benefited from capitalism, but the majority, just like integration, have not benefited. So the ones who have benefited are not willing to look back and say that maybe the system has some problems, whether it's integration or it's capitalism. They're going to say it worked for me, why can't it work for you? How do we deal with these problems? We have to deal with these problems. We have to confront these very daring realities. Mr. Pereira.
Well, Andrew, Africans, we're addressing Africans here. Black people will never achieve economic emancipation, liberation within the capitalist system, within the structures of capitalism in the region. Colonial, racialized capitalism, it is rigged. Now, let me give you an example. Many years ago, President Forbes Burnham in Guyana, when Guyana was pursuing a non-capitalist path of development, and we nationalized the bauxite industry, we took command of the economy, because Burnham realized that political independence, like what Nkrumah said, was meaningless without economic independence. So he was talking about economic independence. And he created financial institutions. And there was a lot that we had learned from the Ujamaa in Tanzania, because Nyerere came to Guyana. We established the Cooperative Finance Bank. We established the Cooperative Mortgage Finance Bank, the Cooperative Housing Finance Bank. And these banks were giving loans to small farmers, to Africans, and all that, to build homes. And we were pursuing this part, and it was working. We implemented free education and everything. And we faced tremendous pressure from the United States. This started because Burnham allowed the Cuban planes to refuel in Guyana on their way to Angola. And Kissinger said they will bomb the airport here. But we were pursuing this path. But we were getting, as I said earlier, they do not give you a breathing space. Anytime you pursue, they don't. So then after Burnham died and his successor, Desmond White, came in, they imposed the Washington Consensus on the new government. And we carried out what is called structural adjustment program. You know what it did? We privatized all the state assets. We sold it out for next to nothing. And you know who had the money to buy it when we privatized? Not Africans. It was bought by white people who never set foot in Guyana. And the Indian capitalist class, they bought it. And then we were told to downsize the army. So when we downsized the military and cut the public service, it was Africans that went home. So Burnham realized that it was the only way, as he said, to make the small man and woman real people, a real man and a real woman. But then that process was reversed. And today we are suffering for neoliberal capitalism in this country because our people are worse off. Right? We don't control, we are not the big controllers, we're not the main stakeholders in the economy. It's white and the Indian capitalist class.
Yes, and that is the whole point I'm asking, that how do we refine their system, the very system that they're using against us? When you read the book also by C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins, and you saw how, what's his name, Toussaint was on the military, who did he learn it from? He learned it from the same white people, but he refined the military skills so much that he beat them at their own game. And that's what we're saying about China. How do we refine our skills? Let's look at Venezuela. As much as if Nicolas Maduro should be ousted tomorrow, we can say that he stood up, right? He stood up unflinchingly to a very mighty superpower, okay? If it were Jamaica or some other countries in the Caribbean, we would have long folded our arms and said, come, do whatever you want to do, right? How do we as a people structure ourselves, organize ourselves, that we are able to stand up to these powers? We can't just always say that, oh yeah, look at what they've done and they're going to kill us. And I think that is going to be a defeatist mentality, wouldn't that be?
Well, we have to have revolutionary politics. I think that's it. That's the only thing. The only other option is the blackface and the high play. Haha, revolution, nothing less. Yes. The only other thing is being impressed by a black man in the White House. But how do you get to the White House? By being the servant. These presidents and prime ministers, they're all errand boys and errand girls of the ruling class. So that's your option, to admire people who are servants of the ruling class. That's not something I want, but I think we have to have a revolutionary consciousness. I think I think a lot of these questions will be answered as we take part in this struggle. But we can't be fooled about what did and did not. When we see, I want to say something though about the civil rights movement. The struggle was for citizenship rights. It was not to be liked by white people or have our own water fountain. The issue was citizenship rights for Black people. And was integration good or bad? Well, Martin Luther King, towards the end of his life, he said, have I integrated my people into a burning house? I think those are important questions to ask, not to resort to segregation nostalgia, as I call it. Someone in their comments said integration, Black people lost their businesses. I think that's something that is exaggerated to a great degree. Most Black people were low-income workers. This idea that there were all these Black businesses and they all went under after the civil rights laws were passed, I think is a great, great exaggeration. And it's a narrative we need to get rid of.
True.
Yes. We can't ignore the fact that we had a more independent spirit. We might not have had, as you're saying, the number of businesses that some people say that we had.
But the independent spirit is one of the things that was lost by neoliberalism and by the triumph of finance capitalism. That destroyed people's spirit, communities, the ability to for people to just to be in community with one another. So the two coincided. Unfortunately, we got this legislation, but then capitalism became more and more powerful and did more and more harm to people. And I have to say, I can only be on another 5 minutes or so.
Yes, I understand. Now, we know we're coming down to the end. What role does the education system play in keeping African and Caribbean people separated mentally, and I would say African people too? Do you think the education system is helping to unite us or to disunite us?
Well, you know, we have in the Caribbean, we have what is called the CXC, the Caribbean Exam Council, right? And we brought in what is called the CXC, and they brought in the CAPE, the Advanced Proficiency. But when you look at it, the way it is structured, right? We have not the curriculum. We have not decolonized there's no attempt to decolonize the education system and the curriculum. It is so Eurocentric. It is so Eurocentric, and you know, education. We tend to confuse education with certification. For example, we have students who are doing 28 subjects at the CXC.
Yes.
And when they come out, they don't understand anything about the history of the Caribbean. They know nothing about what African contribution to this, nothing. So, and we still have after so many years of independence, and we turning out people. We have people with 3 master's degree and all of these things, and yet we have Canadian jurists coming into Guyana to tell us how to draft legal right laws and how to draft it and reconstruct the constitution and all of that. And we're our legal minds, and we just sit there. Judges and magistrates sit there and allow some young man or girl who just came out of university the other day, not older than 35, to lecture them. And it's so we got to get back. I've always advocated the Freudian approach, education for liberation. We do not emphasize that, and that's why we have this George James Institute, and we run as Margaret said, political education is important. We run that for activists, and we open it to students from the university. And do you know the lecturers? You have people who are lecturing at the university. They will tell you when they start off in the philosophy, you still telling people about democracy and the origin of democracy in Greece. Good. And when you show them, if you take them back, you can see that people like Socrates and these people pointed to Greece. Because let me give you an example. The Greeks were never monotheistic. And Socrates was forced to drink hemlock because he was preaching monotheism in the academy at Athens. Right? And you know where he got that from? From ancient Kemet, Egypt. But this is the type of thing. Do you know on campus, on the university campus, we have people who don't know. They're doing history and they don't know who is Ivan van Sertima. Never heard of Ivan van Sertima. He's a great Guyanese scholar. Right? Because the people who are meant to, the ones who work in academia, the ones who are teaching in the high schools, right? They themselves need to go through a process of re-education. Because as Kenneth Kahunda said, and we know, no education system is neutral. All education is ideological. Right? All
absolutely
is ideological. And
Ms. Kimberly, you have to go.
One of the tools that white supremacy have used effectively.
Yes. I know tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and Ms. Kimberly, you have to go. So could you give us your final words in terms of what do you think about education and the role that education is playing, has played, or is not playing within our Black liberation struggle?
We have to decolonize education. I mean, that's right. True. Not everything that Gerald Pereira just said about the Caribbean is true in the U.S. We have a Eurocentric education model. Now Donald Trump is saying if you cannot divert away from the U.S. being the best, greatest country in the world, controlling what universities teach, not that they had to go that far to do it anyway, textbooks, not mentioning Black people at all, disparaging what we accomplished, just out and out lying about the history of this country and the history of the world. We have to decolonize education. So that will be my final word. And thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Special
Thank you so
salute.
much for joining, and I really appreciate your presence, knowing that, and happy Thanksgiving, and eat
Thank-
turkey for me and you.
Speaking of
I'm just
colonizing,
kidding.
that's a whole other issue. But anyway, we'll talk. We'll talk about that. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Bye bye.
Yes. Okay, sister. All the best.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. All the best to you. Yes, Mr. Pereira. So there's this commenter is saying that there's a war coming to Black people, and we are waiting for the enemy to when it's going to start. Go ahead, Mr. Pereira. What would you say to
I mean,
that?
that war has been going on a long time. That war has been going
Yes, I
on a
like
long
that.
time. Every Black
Yes.
leader, look what they're trying to do to Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso and the leaders of the Sahel states. They're right now they're major towns that are under siege by so-called Muslim Islamic militants, who are being supported by the West, by France, by some of the Gulf states to destabilize the region.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they've always been a war in us because, it's back to what you say, right? Black unity, Black liberation, Black power. It will scare those who want the existing order to remain where, domination.
Mm-hmm.
That's they don't want to see, because a united Africa, for example, a united Africa where you've dismantled neocolonialism as is being done in the Sahel states and in Eritrea, a united Africa can bring the Western world and any power to its knees.
Yeah.
To its knees.
Yeah.
To its knees.
That's what Haiti did. That's what Haiti did.
That's
And
what
the
Haiti
African
did.
Americans
That's
did
what I'm
civil
talking
war.
about. Black power. Black power is African power.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. But had we just expanded what Haiti did, back in the days, if we had just expanded on that, the Garveys and the Sailor James and all these powerful people, but we didn't. I think that we got distracted and we've just been a part of the system and we're just sailing along.
As Sister Margaret pointed out earlier, the alternative is we have to opt for revolutionary politics. This, brother, you can recall at the time of the Black Power uprising in Trinidad and Tobago, there was a tendency across the Caribbean that advocated for a new politics, a revolutionary politics, a politics beyond the Westminster parliamentary nonsense that has kept us exactly where we are. We keep changing parties, we change parties, but the system remains the same way.
The same. Mm-hmm.
The same. So, and people like Macandal, the NJAC, the National Joint Action Committee in Trinidad, and you had groups like Tapia House, the New Beginning Movement, Maurice Bishop in the early days, the Movement for Assemblies of the People, ULIMO, Ulay Liberation Movement, which is the indigenous name for St. Vincent, and across the Beng and all of these groups, the Ratoon group in Guyana and all this, they were arguing for grassroots politics, a politics that will allow the people to be involved in the decision-making process, where people can get into assemblies of the people, right, to air their views. Mm-hmm. They make the demands. And we, people like us, I don't use the term, I'm not a politician, I'm a revolutionary. It's a big difference. People like us would be facilitators of the people, to facilitate the empowerment of the people, because we cannot liberate anyone, right?
Yes.
But collectively we fight. We can only fight collectively to achieve our liberation. We can't achieve it individually. And that's why we have organization. Mm-hmm. But we've seen that this Westminster type of politics it's not emancipatory. We're stuck in a neo-colonial arrangement with neoliberal economics that has pauperized. Now, people might talk about China's the only country. Look at what China's been able to achieve. China's the only country that has been able to move millions out of poverty. Now, compare China with India. Do you know there is a, in India, the Communist Party in Kerala state, the Communist Party controlled that state for a long time, right? They held state power, the chief minister. Do you
Yes.
know it was declared in Kerala state that they actually, right, got rid of brutal poverty, but nobody made public, that wasn't publicized. And that's the communists who are holding power in that state have been able to do that. They've been able to
Yes.
win a lot, but you don't hear about that. Good.
Yes.
But in other parts of India, you are not seeing that. Now, what the Chinese did, the Chinese, as Margaret pointed out, the Chinese made sure in China, of course, you have a capitalist class, but it's not a capitalist economy, because the capitalist class cannot, they have their role. They have the Chinese have learned from the mistakes of the Soviets. The Chinese, the capitalist class in China cannot buy and dispose of land. Land is state-owned. Land is state-owned. You see?
One of the things, Mr. Perez, I'm saying.
So the capitalist has to operate. The capitalist has to operate within that framework of the planned economy. In China, people need to understand it. The mechanism of the market is not left to regulate by itself.
Correct.
Right?
That's
right.
But that is what Americans used to have to do.
Value is restricted.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the fact is, what I like about the Chinese is that they understand that the Europeans believe that they're superior, and they have this illusion that they're superior.
Yeah.
But they're not afraid of using their own tools and mastering them at it. And this is the same dynamic, I think, the Toussaint Louverture and the Marcus Garvey were trying to pattern, and to say us that nothing is wrong to use their own tools, refine them, just like you're speaking English, and we can speak it better than they do, as Marcus Garvey would encourage us to do. And that's what I'm saying. But I think this, not your Pan-African ideology, but there are lots of Pan-Africanists nowadays who say, oh, we should reject all things of the West. And I'm saying, no, we use the tools that we can use to improve on ourselves, because not everything coming out of the West is bad.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
Brother Andrew, you've heard about Cooperation Jackson, right?
Yes.
Good. With this Pan-Africanist that died, his son is one of the leading activists. His name is slipping me now. But do you know that in the United States, I've been doing a lot of research on this, on reading. In the United States, there's a lot of factories that were closed. The machinery was just left there. The workers were sent home because they shifted their operations to Indonesia and to the Philippines and those places.
Correct.
And you know what happened? Some activists got together and brought together these workers, and they started fixing the machinery, fixing up the place. They established cooperatives. Good.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing you were talking about. And they're worker-owned cooperatives. They took over the machinery, they fix up the buildings, the factories, and they are running it. And it's run on the basis of one man, one vote. And they have the manager. They have a committee of management that is democratically elected. And it is working. And it is not hitting the mainstream media.
Yes.
They're hiding this because it's working. It's a cooperative. You call it Ujama, you call it cooperative socialism, whatever. Good. So if you really do it and you work the equation, you only need the machinery and the worker. You don't need a capitalist boss. The workers are the boss. The workers will manage, and the management team and everything will manage and administer the operation. And it's working.
Yes.
Operation Jackson's one. They've taken over. It's spreading. But you are not getting these type of reports unless you are in contact with alternative media, dealing with people like yourself, your program, or you're in touch with Pan-African groups active like the Pan-African Community Forum and other groups that are doing this type of thing. Yeah, they're doing exactly what Garvey is talking about.
Yes. Yes. That which helps the people, that which empowers. And I don't care what you want to call it. You know, once you see that our people can be lifted out of poverty and they can live with a certain level of decency, then I don't care what you want to call it capitalism or socialism or whatever you call it. But you can see that it works, and people are not, they don't have to be wealthy, having billions of dollars, but they can live decently. And that is what I would like to see, Mr. Pereira. Now we have this guy saying mass deindustrialization occurred in the 80s and the 90s in the US. And he's correct, Mr. Pereira.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yes. Yes. The same thing happened in Jamaica too in the 1990s, where, you know, the government just sold out everything and all the industries. And I think there's a lady who wrote Too Black to Succeed in Jamaica. I forgot her name. She wrote the book Too Black to Succeed, in which the government under a black Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson, just, you know, he destroyed the entire financial infrastructure. And these people, most of them were black people. And all of the other people, as you're saying, the Syrians and the Arabs, their businesses were saved. Go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
Well, P.J. Patterson from the PNP after Manley he took the PNP in that direction. That's what we're talking about. Now, you know, I think I've seen comments about capitalism. I think one of the things we need to understand is that private enterprise and private property is not one and the same or synonymous with capitalism. We need to understand that.
Okay.
Capitalism is primarily about the production and services of the production of goods and services, primarily for profit. Nothing is wrong with profit, but profit must be used as a measure to gauge the performance of a business. Good?
Correct.
But it is also the concept, if there is an inherent tendency in capitalism to concentrate wealth in fewer and fewer hands. You see that. That is why every time there's a crisis in the system, you see the medium. You know, there's a man who, he's not no Marxist, he's no socialist, but he wrote a very good pamphlet, and he said, look, capitalism is hostile to free enterprise. He wrote that because capitalism is about monopolization. Good. And that is why every time there's a crisis, look at who suffers. It's small and medium-sized business. And the big business, the big corporations survive, either through acquisitions, mergers, or what have you. You know? And the small businesses go out. And what people need to understand is there was a time in the United States when you had a populist movement that were very hostile to the mainstream parties, you know, and they were talking about agrarian type of, some of them were arguing about agrarian socialism. Do you know Mamdani appealed to Americans. He said, look, there was a socialist tradition in America going back to so many years, you know, and it's now people are revisiting it. But the point is that you have to realize that capitalism would not have been possible as a social and economic formation, as a way of producing goods or what Marx are commodity, had there not been the plunder in the wealth from the Americas, right? Since the days when the Spanish, the Portuguese, and all of them were coming into the Caribbean and Americas, and the plunder of Africa, and the trade, the war on Africans, captured Africans, and the trade in captured Africans. It was African enslavement and indigenous genocide that laid the foundation, stone wealth for capitalist development.
Right. Thank you, Dr.
You can't separate it. Capitalism is responsible exactly for our condition where we are.
No,
and
you're
it will not
correct.
after us.
Thank you.
We cannot find salvation in it.
No, there's
And the
absolutely none.
point I want
Thank
to
you,
make,
Dr. Anson. He's reminding me that the book is called Too Black to Succeed. That's Dr. Anson. Too Black to Succeed by Valerie
that's the right,
Dixon. She was the
that's
one
right. Valerie
right,
Dixon,
who
correct.
wrote that
Thanks for
book.
that. That
Yes,
is
Valerie
true. Yeah.
Dixon. Yeah, wrote a
Yeah.
very interesting book about the fact that it was Black people who suffered at the in the hands. Now, somebody's asking a question, Mr. Pereira. Mr. Pereira, please explain to the audience the tendency of the declining rate of profit, and please explain the Leninist definition of imperialism to the audience.
Well, it's one of the things that Marxist economics have always addressed, the declining rate of profit. We can go into that. It's good to have a discussion on that. We see this is what is happening in the capitalist country, but also the Leninist definition of this term imperialism is used loosely. China's called imperialist and all of that. No, imperialism in the Leninist, from the Leninist definition or perspective, is monopoly capitalism. Is monopoly capitalism, we see it in financial capitalism, reinforced by military power.
Yes.
And that is why every time a US corporation or entity is threatened, either through nationalization or you kick them out like what was done in Venezuela, the United States will come down on you. Because because there's the alliance between monopoly capitalism and military might.
Yes.
It goes together.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, because in the era Marx was speaking, but Marx did not address the issue of monopoly capitalism. It came in Lenin addressed it. And imperialism is monopoly capitalism in its highest formation. And imperialism, for imperialism, for the imperialist countries to maintain their where they are, the dominance and their so-called standard of living, it implies a relationship. There is one based not on a balanced respect for others and equal. It's one of domination. There must be one who is the master and one who is the slave. Good. Correct. And anytime you try to shift that imbalance or to readdress it, you will feel the wrath of the empire. That is what they do. Because once you start, you see, let me give you an example. I'll give you an example of something. We have some, and I want to get back to the rate of profit. We have some African scholars Afrocentric scholars. They are good at, they will argue from now, they will prove to you that this emperor was black, this empress was black, this person was black.
Right.
White supremacy is not afraid of that. If you can lecture on how many things Africans
are black. Of blackness. Yes.
That is not, white imperialism is not worried about that. They will give you a
That's
visa.
What we do.
Yeah, they will give you a visa and you can go all around the world and shoot off your mouth. But when you decide to challenge imperialism, which is challenging the economics, when you decide to go after their economy, to challenge them in one way or the other, either by de-dollarizing or joining bodies like BRICS or talking about have economic independence, they will destroy you. They will destroy you. That's how they operate. So they don't mind. They don't mind. You can talk about, you can wear the shiki, good, and dress in all the African clothing, change your name and talk about Kemet until eternity. They are not afraid of that.
That is what we do largely.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you join a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, Pan-Africanist organization that is anti-capitalist, anti-Zionist, and anti-imperialist, and then you will see, right, how the world that will become very restricted to you in terms of your movement. Why?
Yes. Yeah, because they don't want it to see us. They want to control. And the only way they can control is if we are economically dependent. Isn't that so?
Yeah.
Hello? Can you hear me, Mr. Thoreau?
Sorry, that.
Can you hear me? I was saying, can you hear me? I was just saying that they want to control us. That's why they don't want to see us economically independent.
That's right.
Is that
because, yes, because economic independence will complete the process. It will bring about, we will pursue the total liberation, economic independence.
Correct.
So,
correct.
And they're happy with the formal independence. We have the political independence. You know, they're happy with that. They're happy with that. And in the Caribbean, we have not been able to go beyond that formal, or what we call flag and anthem independence.
Because we're not economically independent. We're still depending on the empire, right?
Yeah.
Yes. This person says colonialism and slavery, Mr. Pereira, is explaining, is called primitive accumulation.
That's right.
Not sure on this.
That's right.
Okay, that's what you understand.
Referred to it as primitive accumulation. That is correct.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Sylvia Baker is saying, actually, this was a system in Switzerland in the 50s when I was there as a child. All the workers in the factory lived in a building complex across street from the factory my grandfather left. So that's what the system you're talking about, Mr. Pereira, right? That democratic socialism?
Well, I don't know much about in terms of what Switzerland was doing, but there was, some people tend to use the terms interchangeably, like speak of democratic socialism and social democracy in the same breath. I don't agree. They're two different. Okay. You know, like there was a comment earlier, somebody posted there about Orwell Animal Farm earlier. Somebody posted, but Orwell Animal Farm, and they're using
different pigs on the farm.
No. That person didn't know. First, they need to understand that George Orwell himself, Eric Blair, or George Orwell, was a socialist. And the Animal Farm was not a critique. It was not an attack on socialism. It was an attack on Stalinism. That is what it was. Animal Farm was not an attack on socialism. It was an attack because Orwell was a socialist. He was a democratic socialist. It was an attack on the Stalinian, what some Marx called Stalinian deviation or Stalinism. The Trotskyites would call it Stalinism, with the bureaucracy. You know, that the bureaucracy became a substitute for the capitalist class. So instead of the workers having control over the Soviets, the factories, and the workers' councils, as the Bolshevik Revolution wanted in the early days, under Stalin, it went in another direction. And you can't blame Stalin for that, because they were in a war economy and there was a lot of things happening. The Soviet Union was under tremendous pressure. You know, they had to deal with invading armies just after the Bolshevik Revolution, and then World War II. Don't forget that the West was happy to allow Hitler to destroy the Soviet Union. And Stalin knew it, you know, and that is why he was forced to sign that treaty with Hitler. He had to give him breathing space to build up his war machinery. Yes. So when the Russians counterattacked, the Germans were surprised.
Now, somebody's saying, I think he's clarifying that the apartment early, I guess the point that she made early morning to open doors of factory. I remember Switzerland as being very socialist. So she probably is referring to socialism. And not democratic.
Social democracy.
No,
social
democracy.
I believe I come in the democratic socialist tradition, which believes that the workplace should be democracy. Is not going to vote every 4 or 5 years for the next slave master. Democracy is about people, people being involved in the process of decision making, people being able to shape the decisions that impact their lives. Good. It's about democratization of the economy. You cannot say that you have democracy because you can go and vote for a party of your choice. That's not democracy. That's electocracy.
You're correct.
To have meaningful democracy is about democracy. Literally mean rule of the people, rule by the people.
Of the people, right?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
You're
And
correct.
political democracy must be accompanied by economic democracy. You have to democratize the economy. Good. So, you can tell people, and this is what C. Wright Mills understood when he wrote The Power Elite.
The
You
poor
can
elites,
tell,
yeah.
you can go and you can vote for who will be Republican or president, but you do not vote out the capitalist class that controls the economy. You don't vote them out. That's not
We
up
don't, yeah.
for debate.
Yes.
That's a given.
Well, I tell people that they are selected and then we elect them. So
That's
first
right.
of all, the ruling classes select them, and then we
That's right.
elect them by voting for
Elect them.
one of
Like
the two
Obama.
ones that they,
Obama was
yeah,
selected a
that they've
long
selected.
time ago
Absolutely.
by white
Absolutely.
monopoly capital. By white monopoly capital.
Yeah. I was surprised that he was so close to the Bushes. In fact, there are writers who suggest that he was a boy, he was always around the Bushes because they're a family.
Yeah.
I understand by his mother's side that they're relatives. So he
Yeah.
was by his mother's side,
Yes.
Now, Sanp rather is saying, even if Trump leaves office tomorrow, we Africans across the world will still be in danger of attack by the USA. Absolutely, simply for trying to unify, build wealth, control our resources, successive governments. Go ahead, Mr. Perry. What would you say based on his comment?
On this? Yes, I agree
comment,
with that.
yeah.
It doesn't,
Yes.
regardless of you change the office holder, but the system is intact. It's still the empire, it's still imperialism. And
Yes.
It's still imperialism because the Democrats and the Republicans, as someone said, it's like one bird with two wings.
Yeah.
Malcolm X understood that. So
Yes.
under Obama, I don't know if people can recall, but under Obama, many Africans and Africans from Haiti, as well as from the motherland, were deported, were sent out the country.
Deported. Yeah, they were deported. He was the deporter in chief. They called him the
did
deporter
more-
in
yeah.
chief.
Yeah, he did worse than George Bush Jr.
Yeah. And the same thing
So these are
happened
the
in Kingston when he
contradictions.
went. Yeah, absolutely. The same
And
thing
you know
happened
why
even with the war on drugs.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Perot.
You see, brother, race is a powerful dynamic. No one can deny that as Africans, we're discriminated against because of race. Race is a powerful dynamic, and we cannot ignore it. But class is also a powerful dynamic, and as Sister Margaret
More
pointed
so.
out, that's right.
Yes,
you
more
need
so.
to bring a class analysis. If you have, and this was one of the weaknesses of Marcus Garvey, but you cannot blame Garvey for that. Garvey didn't have a class analysis as such, right? Because Garvey emphasized the concept.
But I think he embodied it though in his mobilization, that he started from the bottom. In some cases, maybe not. Yeah, he tried to uplift the poor and to give them and to let them know that they have to be
the poor.
independent
That's right.
by getting up and yes.
That's
in fact,
that's right.
What's his name?
In that
the
respect,
the
his
scholar
focus was on that. That's correct.
Yes.
Fascism
And that is what I like about.
Well, Mussolini said that.
That is what I like about. Yes. That is what I like about Marcus Garvey, is that he was not so much caught up in this. He was a very intellectual person.
Oh, I love Garvey.
But he was not. Yes, but he was not caught up in this intellectualism and this scholasticism that it blinded his eyes in terms of getting things done. And I think that in today's world, we are the complete opposite. We have all of this scholasticism where we have critiqued everything, and yet still we don't know how to help ourselves. And that is the irony of it all here.
You're right. Well, I come in what is called, there's a school called the Neo-Garveyite tradition, where we try to build on what Garvey, right? In this, taking into account where we are today, because Marcus Garvey time was different. So we understand that. But I do believe that we have to start somewhere. And I pointed out to those cooperative activities and Corporation Jacks and others, we have to. But we are not going to achieve, because I give you the example of what the colonial capitalist state did. to the free Africans who walked off the plantations when they set up their cooperative villages, how they destroyed them, frustrated the development of village-based economies, because they were trying to build little islands of socialism within a capitalist system, a colonial capitalist system, and they destroyed them. So as much as I do agree we have to start somewhere, we start there, but we have to keep our eyes on the bigger project, on the larger issue, which is eventually the capture of state power. The capture of state power. Because once you don't have state power, it will come back to zero.
Wow. That's interesting, and I think that you're right. I want to talk about the U.S. leaders would sell their mother to the foreign investor. Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they do, Mr. Kerr? They sell everything to the foreign investor.
Who's that? Who that leaders? Who that?
Well, he's saying that the leaders would sell their mother to the foreign investor. I think she means that that's what the politicians do. They sell everything, including perhaps if they could sell their mother, and I think that's what she's intimating, to the foreign. They sell out everything.
Yes, well, I don't know. Leaders are broad term. They have some leaders who have stood up, but maybe the misleaders. Yeah. Yes, but I know what they're talking about. Yes, we call it. We have this thing here. We call it in the Organization for the Victory of the People are organized. We talk about what we call it plunder by invitation.
Mm-hmm.
You invite these corporations in and you say that they come to invest, but you're really inviting them to plunder, because in the arrangement, we turn out to be the losers. Turn out to be the losers. Good. And
yes,
that is what happened. And you have this comprador. Somebody mentioned it. You have this comprador class that acts. They are the facilitators between what is the local in the country activity in the country and the foreign investors, and they're happy to have that. They love the arrangement because they benefit from it, and they're happy for it to be that way. I saw it in Ghana when they brought in their structural adjustment program and all of that. You had women with doctoral degrees, a master's degree, standing in front of beautiful sisters standing in front of hotels to be picked up.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? Because when they brought in this SAP, structural adjustment, under Jerry Rawlins just went off rail, man. He was influenced by a so-called financial czar, economic czar, right? Who turned out to be having a relationship at the time with the U.S. ambassador, the female ambassador to Ghana. And she had him all wrapped up. So you had they're giving you so-called aid. So when they give you the aid, it came with all sorts of conditionalities. For example,
conditions.
With all the conditions, right? So you could not. You said, okay, look, we have X and A who are statistics. They said, no. They're going to bring in their exports. So you have to take money from the loan that they give you to hire the exports.
To pay those people, correct?
In a perpetual, you are not getting out of it. You keep digging one hole to fill another hole. And look at where Ghana is after successive government. Ghana has lost its way from the days of Kwame Nkrumah.
Just like Jamaica.
And then
just like Jamaica.
And then you had the most prosperous country who pursued economic independence, and you destroyed them. You destroyed Libya. Right? Because Libya was bringing in this gold dinar that they would have to purchase, measure against, because Libya had 150 tons of gold. So there was this thing about a single army, a single currency and all that. And when the gold dinar was to come out, the French sent a delegation to Libya and told Gaddafi, you can't bring out a gold dinar, you can't do this. And Gaddafi said, I'm not interested in France, I'm interested in Africa. And that whole thing about the removal of the overthrow of Libya and Gaddafi, that is what it was about. 150
and he wants to trade the dollar. He wants to trade in the.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
He would have had to trade with the golden dinar.
Yeah. This person is saying, Mr. Pereira, I remember Obama making fun of Kwame Ture, saying Black America was hoping for him to be like Kwame.
Well, I don't know of that one, but Obama can never make a fun of Kwame Ture. I had the honor of working with Kwame Ture. He was a man of integrity, a very principled man, and a great freedom fighter. Barack Obama was nothing but a neo-colonial Negro. Kwame Ture was a fully liberated African who fought, made his contribution to our fight for total emancipation. So Barack Obama can never make fun of Kwame Ture. Never.
Yes. Mr. Pereira, we have Dr. Hansen here asking, how can governments of various countries implement progressive programs when their fundings are coming from neoliberal institutions?
Good question. They can't. They can't, because those institutions dictate to you how the funds should be spent. And the way that this is how, you're from Jamaica. There's a new edition. I got the new edition of the book, and I was reading it, and I got to go back to it, by the great George Beckford. Persistent poverty. And that is where we are, right? Because once they give you, right, these progressive programs, what they call progressive, we can never, it doesn't take us. It's just like patching a pants here and there, right? Instead of just discarding it to get a new pants, trousers. So it is not geared. It is not geared to bring about economic freedom, right?
Yes.
It's just to manage things, because you remember, this was one. You remember when the Soviet Union, in those days, the Russian Revolution implemented housing, free housing, healthcare, and all that. John Maynard Keynes and others say, hey, we got to do something here. We got to do something. So they created a safety valve, right? Because workers were looking at Russia and saying, look, in the Soviet Union, look what's happening there. Workers have rights, workers have this, free housing, what's going on here? And the Labour Party under Clement Attlee started bring in programs, right? The healthcare, the NHS, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and, the NHS.
Yeah, because
the social safety networks.
The social safety, they had to bring it in. Unemployment benefit and all of that, they had to bring it in. Or else Britain in those days would have exploded. So it's the same thing when these countries implement these progressive programs and funded for neoliberal. It's meant not to transform. It's to manage what we have, to stay within the box, within the framework.
And they're not even progressive programs. They're neoliberal programs, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. They're not even progressive. Now, Leon's Champion said this is exactly what the EU are doing to Franklin Nyamsi and Nathalie Yam. They have sanctioned these two well-known Pan-Africanists. Do you know them, Mr.
I know of that. Yep.
Yes.
Yes, I know of that. Yep.
Mr. Pereira is brilliant.
Those two Pan-Africanists are talking truth to power. They are reaching a lot of people, so they will do that. That is what they're going to do. Sanction them. Yes, that is so.
Yes. James is saying Mr. Pereira is brilliant, which of course, indeed, Mr. Pereira is a brilliant man. Now we have this digital island boy says, like when Biden and Trump went after the Uru movement in Florida, called them terrorist organizations because they were black and getting too uppity. They always do that, don't they?
Well, they always do that. The Uhuru movement is led by, they're an arm of the African People's Socialist Party. They've been around a long time. They bring out a newspaper called the Burning Spear. It's led by Brother Omali Yeshitela. And Brother Omali Yeshitela is a fine thinker. And he understands global politics. He understands. He's very good at that. And he was saying, look, we, based on what is going on in Ukraine, he took a position, they took a position. He said there's no room for neutrality, support that Russia has a right to defend itself. That's the position we took too. It's not that it's about supporting Putin, you know. So because the Uhuru movement took that position, they said, oh, they're taking money from, they went into Omali Yeshitela's home and the activist home, tumbling up their computers to show that they're agents of Russia and that they're receiving money. Nothing new, nothing new. That is what they did to the Rosenbergs. You remember? Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. They said they were Soviet agents, and they were not Soviet agents, right? It was a Red Scare, and they executed them. So nothing new out of the playbook, right? Omali Yeshitela, and the thing about the Uhuru movement is they have done a lot of work, and they have Black economic empowerment program. They've done a lot of work in Africa. They've assisted with cooperative projects in Africa, and they have their own. They make some of their own uniforms, their own clothing. They have economic projects. They have farms, bakeries, and all of those things. The same along the line of party, and they're the African People's Socialist Party. They've achieved, and Omali Yeshitela was in the Black Panthers in the early days, but he's one of the great and respected Black Africans. There's a number of his books out, and it makes good reading. Yeah, but that was all trumped up, you know, saying that the Uhuru movement are agents of Russia. They even, do you know that Sister Margaret Kimberley and the late Glenn Ford, who was from the
Glenn Ford, I know,
very respected online site,
journalist.
They accused, they were actually listing Black Agenda Report as agents of Russia. Do Margaret Kimberley look to you like she's an agent of Russia?
Wow. They all do that, because even with Dr. King,
America, this is what they're doing.
Yes, even with Dr. King, you will see a lot of these right-wing people saying that he was socialist. You know, he was this. Anybody who tries to help Black people, they're branded as being socialist or agents of Russia. I don't know why.
Well, Dr. King took Dr. King. If you read his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. He was a socialist. You know, brother, I think on numerous occasions I've pointed out to this program. My socialism, the ethical dimension of it, I draw it. It is taken from the Bible, from the scriptures. You know, it is there. Jesus was a great socialist. Nobody can argue against that. Good. The Holy Prophet was a great socialist. I'll tell you something. You know, there was a caliph, a ruler called Umar. And at the time, the early Muslim community at the height in Medina, they have the zakat, which is they would distribute it to those who are in need, right? And do you know when the time came for them to distribute the alms, the zakat? There was no one wanted it. Nobody came to collect it. Why? Why? The question is why. You know why? Because the economy in Medina, it was not dominated by the mercantile class. Right?
Interesting.
Early state played a role in making sure that the market was fair, and that the wealth wasn't concentrated in the hands of few, and the price was not in the market manipulated, and it was the mode of production was cooperative. So no one was in need. No one was in need of the zakat when the time came. Now you remember in the Gospels, in the Acts, it says that the early believers sold their possessions, brought the proceeds, placed it at the feet of the disciples. and the disciples distributed it based on need. So if you and your wife had 4 children, you were given enough for the two of the wife, husband and wife, and the 4. If it was just a man and his wife, they got enough for them. Good, and so on. But what happened? A smart guy who he think he was smart to fool the God, the Holy Spirit, by the name of Ananias and his wife Sophia, they brought a set of it only, and they kept back a portion.
A portion.
Yeah. Well, we
A
will call
huge
that
portion
in
too.
contemporary political economy language today. We will call that capital
Yeah.
accumulation. Right?
Well,
And
it's not just that they kept. Yeah, it's not that they just kept back a portion. It's because they didn't honor that which they said that they would have given, right?
Yes,
because let us say that
exactly.
I earned a pit, and I told you I'm going to give you of that portion $10, and
That's
then I
right.
come and give you $5, and that is
$5.
why they were punished.
That's
for
right.
lying.
So they kept.
Yes.
That's right.
Mhm.
They did not. That's right. So why would they want to hold back a portion? Because you want to place yourself above the others, and they pay the price for that. So I am
You know,
saying that the ethical aspect. The
yes,
ethical aspect.
yes,
I am my brother's keeper.
correct,
I am my brother's keeper.
correct.
Hearing from and looking out for my neighbor. As Jesus said, how can you love God who you don't see, and your own neighbor that you see you don't like?
Right. It's like the IMF and the World Bank telling us that they're doing this when they're doing the complete opposite, or government telling you that they're going to give you this, and when they get into office they don't do it. So that is how it looks like. Don't promise me something that you know that you can't achieve, or you can't honor that promise.
That's right.
Because it's a lie.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a lie. It's a lie. Ibrahim Traore has nationalized everything. Absolutely. That's what he has done, right? Or most of the things. What would you say, Mr. Pereira, based on what you're watching now of Ibrahim Traore? Do you think he's still doing a good job consistently?
Yes. They've been able to achieve a lot. And I'll tell you, the Pan-African forces and the other organizations and so are working along there. There's a lot of people are reaching out to them, and they're learning from others. They're looking at different countries and they experiment, and they're trying to build what you call people's power at the base level. And as Troy said, the army must be at the service of the people. The army is not an institution to oppress the people.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's very good. Yeah. So, let me just get some of these, and because I know you have to go. If they invest the population of the patrimoine, land resources, it's like selling their mother's real estate. Okay, you're correct. When they sell out our land, that's what they do. They sell out the people. They use Obama to take out Gaddafi. Absolutely, that's what they did.
Yes,
I think that they used Obama also to formulate AFRICOM, right? Wasn't he the one who instituted AFRICOM? Yes, under his regime. Yes. I think that they recolonized Africa during Obama's regime because he was African. Well, his father was African, rather. They just thought that the Africans would trust him. What do you think, Mr. Pereira, that they used Obama to
That's right.
allow the people?
Because you see, we have been a beaten down people, and when you see you raise the bar, as they say, and the higher you raise the bar, we keep going over it. So everybody, people were somehow happy that here was the first black president of the United States. But there were those of us, of course, we didn't want to rain on people's parade, give them that moment to celebrate. I mean, it was good to see, all right, a black man made it to the White House.
Symbolically, right? Yes.
For the young ones who, if you're, you say, well, look, black made it. But then we understand how insidious and how devious white supremacy is and how it works.
Yes.
And as Malik Zulu Shabazz and other Pan-Africanists pointed out, they said Obama is the white face of black supremacy, and the White House was still the White House.
Yeah.
The black face
he couldn't
White House,
and he couldn't do anything. He couldn't do anything to change a system that was set for how many centuries, right?
Yeah, that's right. And brother, I just want to say something because I see Kwame Ture name popped up again, just for the audience.
Yes.
You know,
Yes, go ahead.
Kwame Ture said on numerous occasions, he said, if Adolf Hitler had killed millions of Africans, he would have been celebrated. No one would have demonized Hitler. Good. But he said the reason why they hate Hitler is because he killed white people.
Right.
So they hate him.
Right.
Because King Leopold of Belgium killed millions of black people. But it is not known to many. It's not. So you only hear of Hitler and Stalin are the two biggest demons in history, right? You don't hear about King Leopold. He's celebrated.
The only pushback I would have against that, though, Mr. Pereira, is that the Catholic Church has killed far more white people than any institution that the world has ever seen. I mean,
I agree with you. But I'm talking here about individual leaders at the time.
Yeah, I understand. How they
portray, they talk about Stalin and things. Yeah, of course. The Catholic Church started killing people who challenged the church in Europe. The Catars,
they were white,
who challenged Catholic.
Yeah.
The Roman Catholic armies, the various kings who were royals, who were Catholics, Roman Catholic, they destroyed the Catars. They killed thousands of Catars across the continent.
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands who were killed. And then when they went out into the so-called New World, after the world was divided up between between Spain and Portugal at the Treaty of Tordesillas, that the Pope divided the world between Spain and Portugal. And you know what Portugal did in Africa and what Spain did in the
West
America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Africa is liberated enough to print its own currency,
and to be followed by the Protestant countries later.
Yes, correct.
And to be followed by the Protestant England,
Protestant countries later, correct, through slavery. Yeah. Well, remember now that slavery was a child of the papacy, because the papacy, the fact that it divided the world up into two, and slavery was at the center of that, imperialism, and that brought the Catholic Church lots of wealth through the gold and the what do you call it now? All of the things found, the resources found in the Americas. A lot of it went to the Vatican too.
Yeah. But what is interesting is that there were some Catholic monks, priests, who started challenging Rome on a number of issues in regard to slavery.
Correct.
And what
Bartolome was one.
Yeah, it is interesting that the Protestant Reformation that attacked the Catholic Church, some of the most vicious defenders of slavery were Protestant church theologians.
That's true. That's true.
Because a movement. John Calvin, the Dutch Reformed Church, whose teachings is based on the theology of John Calvin, on the doctrine of predestination. They believed that that they were God gave them to go out into South Africa and take the land from a lesser people. Yeah. So the Protestants, and don't forget Max Weber on the issue of the Protestant ethic and capitalism. Yeah. So
absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Pereira.
I think Europe was never Christian. So when you talk about Christian civilization, there was never Christian civilization in Europe. Christian civilization. There was Christian civilization in the Syriac church in Mesopotamia, that area, and so. But there's never been Christian civilization in Western Europe. Never. It moved from feudalism to capitalist civilization. There was never Christian civilization.
I think they created the infrastructure in which people could live in freedom according to what the scriptures say. Were all of them standard bearers? No, some of them were, but a lot of them weren't. And that is what I think. Just like you can have in any race, we can have persons who set the standard, but do they live up to the ideal of the standards? Most of the times, human beings just don't live up to standards. Won't you say that?
Well, people vary, there is no such thing.
That's the whole thing.
We don't all behave general. We
Correct.
create our situations, and of course, those situations act on us too. It's a dialectical sort of thing. But what I'm saying is, why I'm saying that is, you have to remember that because of the abuses and the excessive of the church in Europe, there was a revolt against the church, and it came with the so-called European Enlightenment. Good. At the time theology was meant to be the queen, the sciences, and so they tossed it out and they separated, separation of church and state. Theology was not for the university; it was meant to be taught in the seminaries and that type of thing, But there was this revolt, this secular revolt, and the affirmation of reason, the rational mind, and
the secular state. The imposition of the secular state.
Yeah. So you get all of this, the celebration of this, the individual, the individual rights, and you talk about sovereignty of the individual and all of that. And that was the type of ideas, those ideas, the Enlightenment ideas, that helped to shape
our modern
French,
world,
the American Revolution. And they brought, remember, and a lot of those philosophers were atheists.
They were
atheists.
They were atheists, a lot of the French enlighteners, what do you call them? The philosophers. Yeah, the philosophers. They were.
That's right. And the encyclopedias, encyclopedias and the philosophy. That's right. Yeah.
They were. And in fact, France is still largely atheistic. It's still largely an atheistic society. Wouldn't you say that? France?
Yeah, very much.
And Great Britain has followed them afterwards, because before they were more religious, and now they have found themselves also to be mostly atheistic also. Just hearing the level of debate. Go ahead, Mr. Perrer.
You remember? I think some time ago we did point out that this word in African societies, there was no such word for religion as such, right? Because religion wasn't something separate from your social, the way you organize your society, and so everything was interconnected. They had an organic, holistic approach. Good. So it was this concept of religion was first it came up mainly with the Greeks, because the Greeks didn't have, remember, the Greeks had a cosmology as such, trying to understand the universe and so. And they came up with this thing from the Latin word religio, bond or to bind, right? But Africans didn't have, there was no such thing as, Africans didn't say, you asked with your religion. No. Your religion, your economics, there was no difference between the way you organize your politics, your economy, your system of governance, your economy, nothing. It was all integrated. The African saw the human being as a totality. You couldn't compartmentalize him or divide him. God was not God for Sunday and just weekend. God was the God of all activity. He was the God of everything, the God of sports, the God of economy, the God of anything, everything, So you couldn't limit God, the divine mind or the great creator, to just so-called religion,
Right.
African
it's a way of life, as you're saying. Yes,
that's right.
It's your way of life, as this person is
saying.
Way
of life. It was a way of life. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So this concept of religion as such separate, it's a European invention. It's a European invention.
what a wonderful discussion we had today. And I hope that, it's just a pity that the YouTube algorithm is not sending out the videos to the live to more people. And I think that is deliberately done. It's nothing that is I can do it. I'm happy that, because look at Mr. Pereira, the number of comments I'm seeing in the discussion. They should have been sending out the live to a lot more people, because people are really interested in the conversation, but they're not willing to do that. But eventually,
well, you have
perhaps they
to
will do.
realize
We are
that
doing our best.
we are waging a war against falsehood, and they will do anything to out the light.
Yes,
but the light will prevail. The light will
prevail. It will prevail. It will. Mr. Pereira, I want to thank you so much, and I wonder on Sunday. I want to look at multipolarity, because we are seeing a lot of things happening in the world now. The war in Venezuela is beginning to heat up and ramp up, and even in Palestine there. And it seems the other day that Russia and China were not able to veto what the United States is doing in Gaza. Did you really look at that and see any?
Yes,
what is this multipolarity?
I listened to the Chinese ambassador, the Chinese representative, the statement about why China abstained. I listened to the Russians, and I listened to a Palestinian scholar who is based in the United States, and he said, well, whether they had vetoed it or not, the way the US would have acted and so. But I am disappointed, and a lot of activists are disappointed. I think both China and Russia should have vetoed it.
Yeah,
they should have vetoed it. But their argument is, look, that they have relations with the countries that have brought it, like Qatar, Egypt, and all of these countries. Well, America have relations with those countries too. And when it comes to Israel, America vetoes things. So they could have done that. And I think the Chinese position is, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And I agree. I was disappointed. I agreed, Margaret. And many activists are disappointed. Many activists are disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that this multipolar world that we're talking about might not come to fruition. But we'll talk about that on Sunday. Sunday is another topic to discuss, and I think I'll frame it. And if you want me to discuss something else, that's okay, Mr. Pereira, on Sunday. If you're
that's okay, brother.
Or
your thing.
Yeah. Or do you think there's something that is on your mind?
No. I go with that. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'll look at multipolarity on Sunday and discuss this in light of what is happening in Palestine, and also what is happening in Trinidad and other parts of the Caribbean. Thank you so much, Mr. Pereira, for joining today, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah, when we'll I'll send you the link.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pereira. Same here. Bye-bye.
Okay,
and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will see each other on Sunday at 4 p.m. Another live. Please share the live and like it before you leave, okay? All the best to you. Have a great, great night, and I'll talk to you on Sunday. See you then. Any questions before we go? Any questions? Did anyone notice the quiet pivot? All of a sudden, the Caribbean attacks aren't so much about drugs. Right, you're correct. You are correct about it's not about drugs anymore. It's about nonsense that they're talking about. Yeah, remember to like the live, ladies and gentlemen, before you leave. Like it and share the live. Send it to as many people that they can replay the live, and it will go out to as many people. Thank you so much. Have a great night. See you then on Sunday. Sunday at 4 p.m. Caribbean time. That is Atlantic Standard Time. Bye-bye.